Thanks for joining us for the Blue Chair interviews, where we're filling your feed with positive messages and stories of people who are dedicating their time and talents to really helping people in our beautiful city of Moncton, New Brunswick. And today we have with us here in studio, Carole Murphy. Carole, thanks for coming.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, thanks for this. I know we've had a lot of trouble connecting, but we're here together now, and so I'm hoping that people can watch on and learn more about you. So to start things off, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're not originally from Moncton.
No.
But tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I was born in Ottawa. I grew up in Ottawa. We had a pretty small family because my mom was from Nova Scotia. She was from Halifax. My dad was British. So growing up, it was just my parents and my sister and I. But I lived all my life and went to high school, university in Ottawa. And then moved for a couple of years up to North Bay, and then found myself here in Moncton. So I might not be here from originally, but I feel like I'm a Monktonian now. I've been here for a long time.
Because you've been here, how long have you been
I always
in
have
Moncton?
to think about how old my middle son is. So he's 25, so I've been here for 24 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had your first dog. Tell me about your family.
So I have 3 children, and my first son was Kennedy. He was born in Ottawa. And then we moved to North Bay, Ontario, and Liam was born in North Bay, Ontario. And then we moved to Moncton, and my daughter Siobhan was born here. So I said, no more moving, because every time we moved, we had a child. So that was, they've each been born in a different city.
And you had mentioned that your father was from England.
Yeah.
So was he here and met your mother here? Did they meet somewhere else? How did that?
My dad came over in the late 1950s to Ottawa. Actually, before that, he came to visit a friend who lived in Arvida, Quebec, which is right in the middle of trees and forest and everything. And my dad fell in love with the wilderness of Canada. He loved it. So he decided that he wanted to emigrate here as well. So he was a mechanical engineer and got a job at the National Research Council. And when he was working there, he eventually met my mom, who had moved to Ottawa to work for Immigration Canada. I always say they met and married on false pretenses, because my mother loved to go Scottish country dancing. So she used to belong to this Scottish country dancing club, and that's where she met my dad, dancing. So after she married him, she discovered that really he was just there to meet the young ladies. So I don't think they ever danced again after that. So
his purpose is served.
Poor mom.
That's right. And so you have 3 children, one born in Ottawa, and then your middle one was born here 25 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And your youngest?
She is 22, Siobhan. She's 22, and she's graduating university this year.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
Yeah, what a journey that is, watching your children grow up and their personalities developing along with the ages and their interests. It's just, I've loved every minute of being a parent.
That's great. And you are, from what our conversation before, you're finishing up university too. So.
So I think I said to you, I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. So I did my university degree at Carleton University, and I studied journalism. Now, that's not what I wanted to study when I was in high school. I was sure I was going to be a lawyer. I wanted to work in family law. That was my goal. And back then there was grade 13 in Ontario, so I was in grade 13. And my mom just out of the blue said, I don't know why you think you can be a lawyer. You're never going to be able to read all those long, boring books. You have too short an attention span. Well, I just thought, wow, she must be right. I did have a short attention span. So I thought, I've got to think of something else to do. So I loved to write. So I decided that I was going to try journalism. So that's what I did my undergrad in. But not long after I finished, I did work briefly in that industry. My first job was as a junior editor for Wedding Bells magazine. I really wanted to work for the New Yorker or Maclean's or something. But, that was a great start. And then I switched over to an electronic media where the production company did post-production for video and radio ads sort of thing. So I worked there for a little while, and then I met my husband and had our first son and ended up moving. So I never went back to work after mat leave. So I was privileged to be able to stay at home with the children for 10 years before I went back to work. So when I did go back to work, I actually started to, my work came from volunteer work that I had started to do. So I guess I should back up. When we were in North Bay and I had the two boys, I started to volunteer in the childcare center there. It was sort of like a co-op deal. So if you volunteered a day or two in the childcare center, then you could use the babysitting services if you wanted to work out. It was a little bit different arrangement. So that had led to me doing, some Kinder Cooks kind of programs and things like that. I expanded upon it.
Was this with the YMCA?
With the Y,
the YMCA.
yeah, with the Y in North Bay. So when we moved to Moncton, the first thing that I did was I joined the Y. And I remember one day I went in and I must have been wearing a volunteer shirt with a Y logo on it from North Bay. And the gal at the front desk said, "Oh, are you a fitness instructor?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, would you like to be?" So I thought, I would like to be. I had, when we lived in Ottawa, I had been involved a lot in musical theater, so I did a lot of dance and choreography. And I didn't have an outlet for that kind of creative pursuit anymore. So I thought, if I learn to teach fitness, that's musical and, something kind of along the lines of dance. So I started to volunteer at the Y. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And, the Y quickly became home to me. And I did another course through Y Canada, and I took the strength and conditioning course so I could work downstairs as a trainer in the fitness room, that kind of thing. So that eventually led me to my next job. So I started to work part-time for the Y. And that, was not certainly anything that I ever thought that I would do when I started out in my career, but I just sort of, followed the trail that I was being led down, and worked for quite a few years for the Y. Was fortunate enough to be part of the team that built the new Y on Von Harvey, and and learned so much about that, and sort of transitioned from being the fitness director to being the center manager and having more responsibilities and learning more things along the line. And I got really involved with community because, of course, the Y is a charity, and there were lots of outreach programs. We had literacy programs and the Reconnect program that still exists now, all kinds of things on the go. So I started to get more and more involved in community. And then when I was ready for a new challenge work-wise, that led me to work in education. So I was really lucky.
Which is where we originally, and I didn't know this until after, that you worked in education, and that's where we
first met. Yeah. So I worked for the school district too when I started, ASDE, before I left. And I had this great job of community school coordinator. So I was the first one in. That was a brand new initiative that the government at the time had said, let's work to build partnerships between community groups and schools. And I was lucky enough to be in on that as it got started. And did I ever meet a bunch of amazing people through that? People who really had kids at heart and wanted to do good work. So loved that job. Plus it was paired at the district a little bit with communication. And that was my background. So I ended up doing that for the district as well, which worked great. I decided when I went on to work at NBCC that I wanted to do my master's. So I am almost done my master's in education.
In education. So what kind of style of education is
my focus is on adult education.
Adult education.
Because I am working for the community college now. And I just thought that would be a fitting way to study. But it's been a real journey for me. And I guess what I've learned and what I tell my kids is, when you're deciding what you want to do in your life, remember how long your life is, and you don't have to make it all up right now. So I just kept following where opportunities seemed to be leading me, and it all really did start here in Moncton with the Y. It really did.
And you had mentioned the Y gives you the sense of community, and when you go in there, it's just like your family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It still is. So, when we first moved here, I must confess I didn't have a great attitude about moving to Moncton. I wasn't ready for a move. I had just gotten settled in North Bay. I felt connected there,
Right.
had met people. So I was probably a little bit grumpy about the move to Moncton, truth be told. But when I joined the Y, I met great people. I quickly got a sense of what the community here was invited to start volunteering so early on.
Yeah.
That really helped me feel settled. And the more I worked in community, the more I got to know a broad base of people, and the more I've come to appreciate the community that we live in. So here, when you meet an adult your age, they might say, "So what high school did you go
Right.
to?"
Yeah.
Well, that really made me smile in the
Yeah.
beginning, because we wouldn't have asked that in Ottawa because
Right.
there were too many high schools,
Right.
right? But Moncton and Riverview would be small enough that people would find that connection. They'd find commonality, and and they'd say, "Oh yes, I know somebody and that kind of thing." And I really loved that. Yeah. Coming from a family where it was just the four of us, no family, no ties for miles and miles and miles.
So it really was the East stereotype that came through when you moved in.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
And so you've been involved in the Y heavily, and we had talked a little bit about some other involvement. Tell us about, I know Dragon Boat is a big part.
Yes, and actually the Dragon Boat came to me through the Y as well. So I have this expression in my life that all roads lead back to the Y, and they still do for me. So when I was working, this was when we were at the new Y, and we had a new CEO, Kelly Kane. She was invited to join the Dragon Boat Committee by Dave Owen, who is
the Dragon Boat.
Yeah, he's with the Lions Sick Children's Fund, which is the charity that we work with, and one of the founding members of this Dragon Boat Festival. So Kelly didn't have the time to join that group because she was already on several things. So she asked me if I'd be interested in joining. So I said, sure. And the charity really appealed to me. The idea of supporting the Sick Kids Fund, really resonated with me, not because any of my children have ever had life-threatening illness, but because I consider myself really fortunate that none of my children had life-threatening illnesses. The festival itself is really the celebration of all the work that people did just to get to paddle those boats. Yeah. And the stories that each team share with us about why they're raising money, who they're raising it for, what it means to them, just touches my heart every single year. Yeah. Often it's because there's a personal connection with somebody who's been sick. Sometimes it's, a group of people that work together that have just picked a charity that they want to support. But it really shows that people in this community have a drive to give back. I had also joined the board of directors for Big Brothers Big Sisters about the same time, just a little bit before Dragon Boat. And again, that was a tiny little group of people that were trying to do really big things in our community. And again, focused on children and focused on trying to help kids have a better life. So there's so many groups like that in our community. Really.
And it's a good call to just be involved on a board, get in there, make those decisions, and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm the department head for business at NBCC, so I talk to my students a lot about that. And if you have a chance to volunteer and a chance to join a board or sit on a group, a working group or a committee of some sort, first of all, it's a great experience for young people, you make connections and everything. But honestly, you get more out of it personally than you ever think you will. Yeah. It's the people that I've met. Every time I join to help with something, I meet somebody new that inspires me. And I think, wow, they do so much, or they've given so much, or look at all they've accomplished, in trying to better our community, that it inspires me to try to do something else. And, life goes up and down, and sometimes you have a lot of time to give, and sometimes you don't have a lot of time to give. But, whatever we can spare in our time, you get so much back, back. Yeah.
So with that being said then, what excites you most about volunteering, about helping out in this way?
What excites me, I think, is I don't even think about me making a difference in somebody else's life. I hope I do.
Yeah.
I hope I do at some point,
Sure you do. Yes.
contribute. I mean, I've been
Yes.
teaching at the Y now, mostly as a volunteer for 23 years. And I love when somebody, comes in and they're hesitant about doing a class and they think it's going to be hard. And then after the class, they're all sweaty and they say, oh, that was so much fun. I love that. It's very rewarding. But I think what excites me is just that I live in this community, so I want to be a part of this community. And, as I said, there's so many people that do so much more that I learn from those people, and I learn about the community itself. So, and that was one of the things about the job that I had at the school district. I didn't know anything about the Moncton Regional Learning Council. And then I ended up working with, Peter Sawyer and Valerie Higgins, and I learned about the Law Back Literacy Initiative. And so it's not even just about the children, it's about, adults and teaching literacy. So I learn about the struggles that our community has from people that I'm engaging with through that work. And I think that's really important for us to have a picture of where we're living and how we can help.
Do you have any particular stories that come to mind?
I don't want to ever say that it's me that's made these changes, because I've just been fortunate to be a part of lots of different groups. I was on the board with the Canadian Mental Health Association for quite some time, and I was inspired to join that board by a friend of mine, Helen McDonnell. Her daughter had gone to school with my oldest son for quite some time, so we'd met in the Riverview circles. And, Helen tragically had lost her brother to suicide, and she decided to start this initiative called Women in Wellness. To raise funds for the Canadian Mental Health Association, because she felt driven based on her family's loss and everything that they'd gone through. She felt driven to do something. So she wanted to support an agency that could help people who were struggling with mental health issues. So she started this event, Women in Wellness, and it started literally in her kitchen. And then by the time I was involved, I think there had been a couple of them, and every year it got bigger and bigger. So it went from 25 women to 50 women to 200 women to 300 women. Wow. And now there are Women in Wellness events right across Canada because of what this one person did. I think that we should not look for these big changes, but just understand that our volunteer work, we may never feel the difference that we make. I don't look for anything to come out of it. I just think, that sounds like a good idea. I want to help. How can I help?
Just get alongside of someone and help.
And just believe in it. I think it's like being a teacher. You never know the impact that you have on your students. My parents both really modeled for me that, they wanted to do something to benefit their community. They wanted to give back a little bit. My mom started to volunteer in the school when my sister and I were little, like a lot of moms do. She was not working when we were young. She returned to work later on. So she volunteered in the library. And, my dad also volunteered, so he worked full time, but he volunteered with an association called the Rideau Trail Association. He was a founding member of this organization that built a hiking trail from Ottawa to Kingston. From the very beginning, I remember helping hammer those orange metal triangles on trees.
That's awesome.
And, trying to chop our way through. We would literally blaze the trails. But my parents both really modeled for me that, they wanted to do something to benefit their community. They wanted to give back a little bit, and I guess the first board of directors I was ever on was in Ottawa with the musical theater group I belonged to. And I started with them out of personal interest because I liked to perform and sing and dance, so that's how I started. And then I ended up volunteering as a choreographer and volunteering on the board of directors. And then I volunteered at Moncton High as a coordinator as a choreographer when I came here. So, you start with your own personal interests, and then you find a way to build it and help make it better. Using
your strengths, which is what this is all about, how people can use your strengths and talents and time to help other people.
That's right.
Lift them up, and it's great That's great.
And if anybody had said to me, "Oh, you have strengths and talents to give,"
Yeah.
I would have said, "Oh,
Right.
I don't."
That's right.
Really,
No,
I don't know what I could do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because I wouldn't have seen that, you know. But as you get involved and you start with small little things, it just becomes so natural.
It
right?
snowballs.
Yeah, it really does.
Well, thank you so much for your involvement in our community, and I hope people watching will take your advice and help find an interest, get plugged into the community somewhere, and you never know who's there and need your help,
never
because
know.
someone needs your help, right? We
Yeah.
don't know who that is, but someone does, and if you're volunteering and you're in there, you can do it.
Yeah, and you'll get so much out of it.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
thanks again for coming.
Thank you for having me. Great.